Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening up the financial planning playbook to tackle one of the most critical areas of personal finance, true financial resilience.
Yeah, it's really the elephant in the room, isn't it? Everyone's so focused on building wealth, but very few people analyze their ability to actually keep that wealth when disaster strikes.
When things go wrong.
Exactly, like a prolonged disability or a critical illness. And the surprising thing, the thing most people miss, is that your stability isn't just about your income. It's the underlying soundness of your whole financial structure. That's what determines if you can weather a real health crisis.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going to dive deep into the key metrics, net worth and cash flow,
Yeah.
and really assess financial readiness like a professional risk manager would.
Right. And our mission here is to show you, the listener, exactly how to translate your own assets and liabilities into a real measure of resilience.
And then we'll see how that patchwork of insurance and specifically for our Canadian context, government benefits, fits into the whole picture.
The ultimate test really is simple, but it's absolute. It's asking yourself, can you survive for at least 1 year?
1 year, that's the benchmark.
It is. If you lost your earned income tomorrow or suddenly faced massive medical expenses, do you have enough resources, and I mean liquid assets and positive cash flow, to cover everything for a minimum of 12 months? That's the question.
So let's start with the foundation then. Net worth. We all
Mhm.
kind of know the formula. Assets minus liabilities.
We do. But the moment you shift from simple accounting to, crisis planning, that number gets complicated fast.
How so?
Well, the first thing is valuation. If you look at your investment portfolio, for example, should you value those assets at their fair market value, or should you be using an after-tax basis?
Yeah, okay. The real world number.
The usable number. For risk management, after-tax is almost always more accurate. Because if you have to liquidate, say, an RRSP or a stock portfolio in an emergency, the taxman wants his cut right away. You only get what's left over.
Right, that could be a huge difference.
Mm.
And what about this other distinction the sources make? Calculating net worth on a living basis versus an at-death basis. Why does that matter for disability planning?
Because it forces you to think about all potential liabilities. On a living basis, you're focused on immediate liquidity. But if you switch to an at-death basis, you have to factor in huge future liabilities, like final expenses or the massive tax bill that comes due on an RRSP at death.
So it's about seeing the whole picture, even the risks you aren't insuring for right now.
Exactly. You value things differently, too. Life insurance becomes its death benefit, not its cash value. A good risk manager keeps that valuation approach consistent through the whole analysis.
Okay, let's focus on the assets that actually count in an emergency. The key here, it seems, is liquidity.
Oh, it's absolutely paramount. When we say a current asset, we mean something that can be turned into cash either immediately or, within 12 months.
Which is why the focus is so heavily on non-registered assets.
Right. Your taxable investment accounts, they're not sheltered, so you can sell them quickly, assuming, of course, that market conditions are decent enough that you're not taking a huge loss.
But most people have their biggest chunk of savings in registered funds, like an RRSP or a TFSA. Why are those treated with so much caution as an emergency fund?
Two big reasons. Control and tax. A TFSA is generally okay. It's tax-free on withdrawal. But an RRSP, that's fully taxable as income when you pull it out.
So you could lose 30%, maybe more, right off the top.
Easily. And that potential tax bill, you have to treat that as a kind of hidden liability when you're calculating your true usable net worth.
Speaking of liabilities, let's touch on the debt side. We know the obvious ones: mortgages, loans, credit cards. But the sources mention the adjusted cost base, or ACB. Why is that so critical to track in a crisis?
So the ACB is, it's just what you originally paid for an investment in a non-registered account. If the market value is higher now, you have a capital gain. You'll owe tax when you sell.
And if it's lower, a capital loss.
Right, which you can use to offset other gains. Listing the ACB is crucial because if our example couple, John and Jane H., suddenly need 50 grand, we don't want them selling a big winner and triggering a huge tax bill. We want them to, liquidate their losers first to manage the tax hit.
Tax optimization, even in a crisis. That makes perfect sense. So let's bring in that example, John and Jane H.
On paper, they look very stable. Their net worth statement shows over $1.1 million in assets and about $240,000 in liabilities. So they have a net worth of $863,000.
That's a strong number. That's the snapshot, right?
It is. Net worth is the stock of wealth. It tells you how much you own. But is that $863,000 a financial mirage if they need cash next month?
And that's where we have to move from the static picture to the moving picture.
Precisely. From the stock of wealth to the dynamic flow of money. And that brings us to the cash flow statement.
Okay, this is where we list all sources of net after-tax income and all expenses. It sounds simple, but you say it has to be based on actual spending.
It has to be reality. You can't budget for a crisis with fantasy numbers. You need to know what you're actually spending. And this statement serves three really critical functions.
First, I see, is identifying the bare minimum cash you need to survive. This sets the floor for your insurance coverage. If your bills are $6,000 a month, that's your target.
Correct. Second, it shows if you have a surplus. Maybe you have rental income that creates a $2,000 monthly surplus. Well, that can offset some of your lost income or higher medical bills.
And third, it shows if you can even afford the insurance premiums or if you need to cut back on, say, entertainment to free up the cash.
Now, here's the aha moment, the real insight. Look at the 3-month cash flow for John and Jane. Remember that strong net worth?
Yeah, almost $1 million.
Well, their cash flow is
Right.
not so stable. It makes their resilience really unpredictable.
I'm looking at it now. It's a roller coaster. Month 1, they have a surplus. A good one, almost $2,700.
Mm-hmm.
Month 2, it gets even better. It goes up to nearly $3,600 because their car payment's finished. They're in great shape here.
But then look at month 3.
Wow, okay. It swings violently into a deficit of over $3,000. What happened?
They spent $7,000 on a family holiday, a discretionary expense.
So net worth is the snapshot, but cash flow is the movie. And for them, it's a pretty dramatic movie.
Uh-huh.
A huge asset base is hiding a really volatile, sometimes negative cash flow.
Exactly. If a disability hits in month 1, they're okay. If it hits in month 3, they are immediately burning through savings just to pay the bills. You need both.
So once they have that full picture, the next logical step is to see what protection they already have.
Right. And that brings us to layering on that protection insurance and government benefits. Before you buy anything, you have to do a meticulous catalog of your existing coverage.
And we classify that coverage in 2 ways, by source and by benefit.
By source, you've got your individual policies, group insurance from work, and then those little lender-owned policies from a credit card or a loan.
What's the common trap with that credit card disability insurance?
People assume it'll pay off their balance, but it almost never does. It usually only covers the minimum required payment each month. It's very, very limited protection. It should never be your main plan.
Good to know. And then by benefit, we're talking about disability income, critical illness, long-term care, that sort of thing.
Now, once you've listed them, you have to dig into the fine print, the characteristics, exclusions, benefit amounts, duration, tax status, and this is crucial, the definitions and termination rules.
Let's focus on those termination rules for employer group insurance. What's the big risk there?
Portability, that's the risk. If your coverage is tied to your job, it might just disappear if you leave the company, with no right to convert it.
So if your health changes and then you lose your job, you could be left completely uninsurable.
You could. Association group coverage, on the other hand, like through a professional body, often doesn't have that restriction. It's more portable.
That's a huge distinction for anyone planning a career move. Okay, let's pivot now to the public safety net, the 3 big Canadian government disability programs.
We can start with employment insurance or EI sickness benefits. This is the short-term one.
What are the main limitations here?
It's temporary, a maximum of 26 weeks with a 1-week wait. And the amount in 2024 is 55% of your insurable earnings, but it's capped at $668 a week. And very importantly, it's taxable income.
But the critical piece here is the coordination rule. EI is a second payer. Why is this so important for your personal planning?
This is vital. EI benefits are reduced dollar for dollar by almost any other benefit you get. CPP, workers' comp, group insurance. If they pay you, EI pays you less.
But there's one exception.
The only exception is a personally owned disability policy. This means you can stack your private insurance benefit on top of EI. It really elevates the strategic value of owning your own policy.
That's a powerful point.
Okay.
Moving to the big one, CPP or QPP disability. This is long-term, but the definition is famously strict.
Oh, the definition is the ultimate gatekeeper. It requires a disability that is severe and prolonged. Prolonged means long-term, likely permanent.
But severe is the real hurdle.
It is. It means the disability prevents you from working in any capacity. Not just your own skilled job, but any job.
And the sources gave us that perfect, memorable anecdote to illustrate this. The twins, Tim and Tom.
Yeah, imagine Tim and Tom, they're 45, both in the logging industry. They're in a serious accident. Tim damages his arm so badly he can never operate heavy machinery again. But after rehab, he manages to get a lower-paying admin job in the head office.
Okay, so he's still working, earning an income, just not what he used to.
Exactly. And because he can still work in some capacity, Tim would not qualify for CPP disability.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge distinction. So what about Tom?
While Tom was more severely injured, he has permanent debilitating spinal damage. He can't sit or stand for long, can't do any kind of work. He is truly unable to work in any capacity. So Tom would qualify.
The difference between your job and any job, it's monumental.
It is, and it's why private insurance definitions are so incredibly important.
And finally, let's just quickly touch on workers' compensation. This is the narrowest one.
Very specific. It only covers an injury that happens on the job or a workplace-related illness. But if you do qualify, it's usually the most generous benefit, paid 100% by the employer, and it can be 80 to 90% of your pre-disability net income.
And just to tie it back to our cash flow analysis, what about the tax status?
Crucial point. EI and CPP are taxed as income, but workers' comp benefits are tax-free. So a $1,000 CPP benefit is worth much less in your pocket than a $1,000 workers' comp benefit. You have to account for that tax bite.
This all leads us to the final step, finalizing the profile and spotting the gaps. After you've done all this work, you perform the gap analysis.
Yep. You prioritize needs based on your personal situation, age, health, job, and your finances. And you compare all your resources to your existing coverage. You might find you're perfectly covered or even have a surplus, but usually we find problems.
Let's talk about the two most dangerous problems, overlap and gaps. Overlap sounds like a good thing, but it's not.
It can be a hidden trap. A lot of policies have what's called an all-source maximum clause. This means if your total benefits from all sources, private, group, government exceeds, say, 85% of your old income, they'll actually reduce your payout.
So you could be paying for coverage you can never actually collect.
You could, and then of course the most likely scenario is just gaps.
Where do those gaps usually show up?
Well, besides just not having enough money paid out, the two most dangerous gaps are about time and definition. First, the waiting period, the time before benefits start, might be way too long for you to self-fund with your liquid assets.
And second,
The definition.
the definition. The qualifying terms are too restrictive. You're insured for any occupation when you thought you were insured for your own occupation, and it simply won't pay out when you need it most.
So the big takeaway for you, the listener, is really about proactive financial fortification. It's about knowing your numbers. It's about using this analysis to make sure your own resources, your liquid net worth, your cash flow, can actually get you through that waiting period, and that the fine print on your policies will actually protect you.
So we've mapped out how this deep dive into your net worth and cash flow, combined with a really meticulous review of all your insurance, private and public, creates this powerful risk management program. But it all seems to come back to that definition of disability.
It really is the crux of the matter.
We saw how CPP's unable to work in any capacity definition just radically changes who gets help. So when you review your own policies this week, maybe ask yourself this one provocative question. Are you insured for the job you do, or are you only insured for a job you could do?
That's a great question.
Because understanding that distinction, that really is the secret to true financial peace of mind.